In the middle of the 2024 season, it seemed that Mercedes had been resurrected. In the 4 races before the summer break, the Silver had 3 victories and finished on the podium everywhere. However, with additional upgrades, the old problems with the balance returned, and after the vacation, the team still cannot deal with them. First, the results dropped significantly, and after another month's pause, the car W15 again became uncontrollable. In the final Texas qualifying, George Russell flew into the wall because of the long repair team violated the rules of the closed park. The team of mechanics did not meet the deadline for work, and the Briton went to start from the pit lane. I really tried to attack on my lap, trying to squeeze speed out of the car that it just wasn't capable of, as it turned out, and I paid for it. And I'm very disappointed with myself, because the whole team worked so hard on the preparation of updates, and now they can all be thrown in the trash can. And we don't have any answers yet. The problem is how the car interacts with the tires. And even small changes make all the difference. Temperature fluctuations or wind changes. We either go on a par with the leaders or suddenly begin to lag by 0.5 to 0.6 seconds per lap, said after the session Russell. In the second practice of the Grand Prix of Mexico, the situation repeated. Overload in the crash reached 35 G. I don't fully understand what happened. The car suddenly started bouncing and vibrating, and before I even had a chance to catch it, I was turned around, George said immediately after the accident. And it's not that it's the Brit's fault. His partner has the same difficulties, just the case did not come to bright crashes. In the U.S., Lewis Hamilton flew into the gravel and came down right on the first laps. The bells were still ringing in the first practice. In the first session, I had the same thing. I got spun in turn 3, which is so rare. In all the years I've been racing here, it's never happened in turn 3. I was just talking about George having the same problem yesterday, but he's back in an old-style car, and he looks good, so maybe there's something wrong with the new stuff, Lewis suggested after the Austin round. However, Russell's incident in Mexico disproved Lewis, as George reverted to the previous version due to a lack of new parts. And after the second crash, he rolled back to the bottom and Dodger of the first half of the season, Miami Imola, altogether, and still qualified above number 44. The problem is experimentation. Mercedes used radical settings. The situation was clarified by the technical director of the team, James Allison. According to him, everything is fine with the updates. They work as expected in the team. The matter is in the ground clearance settings, with which Mercedes overdid it. I guess we pressed the bolide to the ground too much. These bolides like low ground clearance, and the lower your bolide, the more good lap time you collect. But if you oversteer, the car starts to behave in a not-so-nice way. If you unluckily hit a bump, it destabilizes the bolide. The rear axle goes out of control. In general, such settings add speed when everything goes smoothly. But if you hit a bump at an unfortunate moment, if there is a side wind, the pilot will be penalized for it. As for the accident in the second practice, we know exactly what happened. Well, just look at Red Bull, for example. Their cars have no problem at all going over such a curb. Over the past 2 years, I use this curb, passing over it, and thus saving time in the 8th turn, in general, on every lap. In the first practice this year, I did 4 laps like that, and everything was fine. And then, suddenly, I think you saw everything on the replay, the car just jumped as if it was a kangaroo, said George. Nevertheless, Russell's accident is not only a sporting problem, but also a financial one. After all, even before that, Mercedes had a crash in practice at the Italian Grand Prix. Then the car crashed Junior Kimi Antonelli, which will replace Hamilton next season. The situation is exacerbated by the conditions of a limited budget. As already said the head of the team, Toto Wolff, we have serious problems. We are having difficulty staying within the budget limit. Obviously, we still had the incident with Kimi at Monza, then the second one with George last week, and now here we are again. We will be able to rebuild the old chassis, but the rest is a write-off. One side of the car is completely destroyed. The engine and gearbox have to be checked, then everything else. There are spare parts, but the financial issue is very acute. All these accidents have severely narrowed our field of activity in terms of budget. The impact is very strong. A new chassis is very expensive. Now we need to carefully calculate the cost of everything we put on the car. So in Brazil, we are bringing 2 upgrade packages 2 bottoms, but that's it. There's nothing else. Now we are under certain restrictions. We have to be creative. How many more new parts can we put in afterwards? The answer is 0. That's the bottom line, admitted the chief and shareholder of the team on the Air of Sky Germany. Because of budgetary savings, Lewis was not put in a new motor after the failed qualifying in the United States. Although the start from the pit lane and from the bottom 5 did not make any special difference. We were willing to go for it, but you can't replace a power unit and not pay, explained Ellison. If a motor fails because of a technical problem, the rules say you can replace it with a new one, and the cost of a new one doesn't fall under the spending limit. But if you're changing a motor simply because you want a new one, that's a different case. You'd have to pay $2 to $2.5 million extra for that, and we wouldn't get the benefit. A new motor would improve lap times, but the loss in terms of budgetary constraints would not recoup this gain. Moreover, George got into a very unpleasant situation. He himself earlier criticized the team for the lack of spare parts. This whole situation is very frustrating. After all, in the last 2 weeks, I myself have been putting a lot of pressure on the team because of the lack of spare parts. And to get into such a crash was not at all necessary. Just the problem is that we do not know why it happens. We are not trying to squeeze out of the machine more than what it is capable of. Just sometimes, it's sometimes like this, said Russell. His position is understandable. After the departure of Hamilton, it is he who must lead the 8-time champions, and already takes on a leadership role. Therefore, involuntarily wondering, is it true that Mercedes now so necessary radical experiments with settings? Can he afford them? Is there any sense to take such a risk if in the Constructors' Cup is unlikely to move? Thank you for watching this video to the end. I will be very pleased if you share your opinion in the comments. Put a like and subscribe to the channel so as not to miss the most important. See you in the next video.